Hey, everybody, back with another episode of Connecting with the Creator. Last week we were working through Matthew 1 through 6 and the story of Jesus and his teachings. And today we're getting started off in chapter 7. I think the best thing to do is just to dive right into this and then we'll talk after.
Oh yeah, let's go.
All right. Chapter 7. Don't judge so that you won't be judged. For the way you judge others is how you will be judged. The measure with which you measure out will be used to measure to you. Why do you see the splinter in your brother's eye, but not notice the log in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the splinter out of your eye, when you have the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly, so that you can remove the splinter from your brother's eye. Don't give to dogs what is holy, and don't throw away your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet, then turn and attack you. Keep asking, and it will be given to you. Keep seeking, and you will find. Keep knocking, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who keeps asking receives. He who keeps seeking finds. And to him who keeps knocking, the door will be open. Is there anyone here who, if his sons ask him for a loaf of bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a snake? So if you, even though you are bad, know how to give your children gifts that are good, how much more will your Father in heaven keep giving things to those who keep asking him? Always treat others as you would like them to treat you. That sums up the teaching of the Torah and the prophets. Go in through the narrow gate, for the gate that leads to destruction is wide, and the road broad, and many travel it. But it is a narrow gate and a hard road that leads to life, and only few find it. Beware of the false prophets. They come to you wearing sheep's clothing, but underneath they are hungry wolves. You will recognize them by their fruit. Can people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every healthy tree produces good fruit, but a poor tree produces bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, or a poor tree good fruit. Any tree that does not produce good fruit is cut down and thrown in the fire. So you will recognize them by their fruit. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who do what my Father in heaven wants. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we expel demons in your name? Didn't we perform many miracles in your name? Then I will tell them to their faces, I never knew you. Get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. So everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a sensible man who built his house on bedrock. The rain fell, the rivers flooded, the winds blew and beat against that house. But it didn't collapse, because its foundation was on a rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a stupid man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, the rivers flooded, the wind blew and beat against that house, and it collapsed. And its collapse was horrendous. When Yeshua had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at the way he taught, for he was not instructing them like their Torah teachers, but as one who had authority himself. I think it's very important there at the very beginning when it talks about not judging so that you won't be judged, and not, essentially looking at the splinter that's in your brother's eye when you have a log in your own. I think self-reflection is really, really important in how we go about our lives, and not being so worried about what everybody else is doing or what's going on in their lives and talking about those things, but being concerned about me and how I can do better each and every day. I think we all make mistakes. Our head get in a different spot. We can raise our emotions, get upset, get frustrated. A lot of the times, from what I've found, is that it comes from miscommunication. Oftentimes, not having difficult conversations, talking about things that are difficult. And I've been trying to, think about, where does this come from? And I think for me, inside of our family, we never really had many difficult conversations. And so I always looked at difficult conversations as, if I said the wrong thing, that people might get offended, and then like you would lose those people. Like they would go out of your life. And so when you look at having difficult conversations from those lenses, it can be really, really scary. But as I've grown and as I continue learning, I realize that in order to grow in life, you have to have difficult conversations, and you have to have those you have to be able to have those with people who are who have emotional awareness and who can take responsibility for their actions, and who also have um, are willing to do self-reflection. And if they're not, then one, you should have never had that conversation, but also it just helps you to develop in the future how how close you can get with that type of relationship, what type of commitment you can have, and how truthful and honest you can get with each other, and how real you can get, what depths you can get. I think it's really, really powerful to be able to do that, where you can really understand who I should be spending my time with or conversating with, or what I can talk about and how deep I can get. Those are usually the uh, conversations that are helpful. But
Right.
that's getting way off topic.
Yeah, I think I mean, just having those difficult conversations, like you said, it was very, growing up, it was never, I don't know, I don't feel like we had very many difficult conversations, so it was very hard to even think of how to navigate those situations. So, and then taking that into growing up and to becoming an adult, it's a very important skill to have when just anything. And but yeah, like you were saying, yeah.
And that's the thing, is that when if you grow up in that surrounding and you don't do those things, they're not natural as an adult, and so
Mm-hmm.
you almost think that they're taboo. It's like a taboo where you just don't have difficult conversations. Like, it's a bad thing to have. They're scary. It's just like, and then you just kind of like, everybody's kind of like, walking around on eggshells, and nobody really does that. And it's like, well, holy cow. Like, it's so much more freeing when we're having difficult conversations, especially at work. It's like, listen, like, how did these mistakes happen? Like, what happened here, guys? And it's like, well, this and this and this, and we had this pressure, or we were busy here, and then this guy came in. It's like, oh wow, okay, so understood. Instead of like, what the hell are these guys doing? Like, how are they
Right.
making all these mistakes? It's like that difficult conversation where it's like, okay, it's probably not something anybody wants to talk about when they're making a mistake. They don't, but it's like that helped me to be more empathetic and understanding of the situation until we can solve the situation. So it's like, okay, how do we create a process so you don't get distracted in the future, or so that we don't do these things? If there's a phone call that you're on and you have to write notes about it, don't take that next customer, that next phone call, don't deal with that next person until the notes get set. But it's just a difficult conversation that manufactures all this. And what it also helps to do is it helps to build trust, because when you have a boss that has difficult conversation, and then he can not get emotional enough, but he actually understands and grasps, it's like, it's awesome how you just start getting more and more connection.
Right. Yeah, and that kind of goes hand in hand with ask and it will be given to you, seek and you shall receive, and knock and the door will open. But it's just, you can live in your own little world inside your head, but if you never talk about anything, nothing's ever going to be truly resolved.
Well, and it's not just asking or seeking, right? That's learning, right?
Right.
So in order to progress at life, we got to keep learning. And like, once you get stagnant, you stop learning, you sit around, watch TV, or you get on social media for hours a day. You're like, what are you seeking? What are you doing? Like, how are you progressing in life?
Right.
And like, even for me, asking was always something I really, really struggled with, like asking anybody for any type of help.
Mm-hmm.
And last week I had a new employee, and I wanted to get some pictures for my LinkedIn. I wanted to update my LinkedIn, and I was always awkward. Like, I was like, I don't want to take them myself. And so finally I was like, hey, like, can you just, I got a nice shirt on. Can you like go take pictures? She's like, of course. And it's just like, oh wow. Like,
Hmm.
that was so easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it was shyness. I don't know if it was pride. I don't know what it was previously, where it's just like, I don't want to ask somebody. Or you ever go to like a theme park or something, and maybe you and your Evelyn, you guys want to get a really good picture, but you're like, I don't want to ask anybody to take it. Like, that makes me uncomfortable. But it's like, ask, just
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like just ask, like, enjoy the experience, and don't it's like, what is that? What is that burden that we have to not bother people or think that we're a hindrance to people when so many people are just so willing to be able
Mm-hmm.
to help?
Right. Yeah. It almost like you wait for somebody to ask to do things like that, and it's like nobody's gonna come up and ask you if you want your picture taken or stuff like that. But it's just like, so if you ever ask, it's never going to happen, you know?
Right. Well, in the same way, like in a career, like if you're in a job and you want to progress and you want to make more money and you want to, like, nobody's going to come up there and be like, okay, here, like, do this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
That's like for me, I've just learned through previous businesses that you just keep doing more. What can I do now? How can we do this? Every time I see an issue, it's like, well, what's going on here? How do we fix this here? How do we fix that there? And then it's just like, and now I have all this information and I have all this wisdom and knowledge inside of the industry because I've asked so many questions to try to figure all these pieces out. Now I'm way more valuable. It's like, I'm valuable to this
Mm-hmm.
company and other companies, and you just set yourself up for success.
Right.
And I think so. One of these verses that's also always really, really, I think, been powerful is always treat others as you would like them to treat you. But I've also heard it flipped over the other way is that um, expect others to
Mm.
treat you the way that you would treat them. So expecting others to handle a situation how you would handle it. And when they don't do that, or when they're not kind and compassionate or loving, not just to accept that and be like, oh, okay, like, yeah, okay. It's like, no, like, you're not handling this properly. Like,
Mm.
think about how you would handle it and how you would talk. And if they don't talk that, like, create boundaries and set up protocols. Like, listen, like, this is not right. Like, I'm not going to allow you to just walk all over me or to take advantage of me, whether it's in the workplace or uh, I'd say that workplace and maybe like sometimes in friend groups as we grow up as kids and maybe teams, you get somebody who's maybe very, very uh, confident and has a lot of strength and where they can like just kind of maybe feel like they can push people around and they take advantage of it. And it's like, no, like you're not treating them properly. And I think
Mm.
this is something that you shared, you did a really good job of where your friend group in high school, I had always asked, like, were there really any kids that got made fun of? And I was like, something that never really happened around your friend group. And I was like, man, I really, really applauded that and appreciated that because like you guys were like watching out for each other.
Right. Yeah. Anything else to add to that chapter?
Uh, I think the only other aspect of it is that, likewise, every healthy tree produces good fruit, but
Right.
poor trees produce bad fruit. And, I've been on this health kick for quite some time. And the more processed foods and sugar and thing that I remove from
Mm.
my diet, the healthier I be.
Yeah.
Healthier I be.
Yeah. Yeah.
The better I feel.
Yeah.
And it's just, dude, it's just amazing how good I feel like today at 40 than I did when I was at 30, like reducing the sugar and
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm like, I used to have like French fries every night. And so I've been kicking those out. And it's like in the mornings, how much more energy I have. And I don't have like the lows. I didn't really know what highs and lows were, but it's like,
Right.
oh, now I do know what highs and lows were
Right.
because I'm actually
Now that you're
not
not
feeling the
experiencing
lows
them.
of the tired. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And so I think it can look like I'm obsessed with this thing, but it's like I want my body to be able to perform at the best level that it possibly can, and it feels great being able to give it the right fuel to be able to do that. It's amazing,
Right.
dude. It's like what other people do is completely up to them, but it's the feeling that I get from it.
Right.
I've really been enjoying that.
Huh. Nice.
Yeah.
You
So,
want me to
oh
start reading on 8?
yeah, go ahead.
Alrighty. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said. Be clean. Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, See that you don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home, paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, 'Go,' and he goes. And that one, 'Come,' and he comes. I say to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and said to those following him, "Truly, I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to I say to you that many will come from east and the west, and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, let it be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that moment. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. When evening came, many who were demon possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead." Then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." He replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and waves obey him." When he arrived at the other side in the region of Gadarenes, two demon-possessed men coming from the tombs, met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." He said to them, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town, and reported all this, including what happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded with him to leave their region.
So this is where the New Testament, for me, I start to have a little bit of a struggle, because you go from the Old Testament and not really any mention of demons or anything. I think we kind of talked about this a little bit last week, of Satan, angels, and then it's just like they just show up, and it's like we're supposed to know what they are, what that even means, like where
Yeah.
did they come from, how were they created. I mean, at least when we go back to like the creation story, you see Adam and Eve, you see how they were born, you see him naming the animals, and it's like a complete, is that called genealogical order, where it's just one thing after another, like A,
Chronological.
B, chronological order, yeah, yeah. To where you see how things form, how they begin, what it is. I guess there was no explanation of who God is and what that is or anything like that.
Right.
But it's just, and then when like things just show up, I've always had a really, really hard time with things just showing up out of nowhere when it comes to books and um, literature, and trying to like grasp it, especially if it's nonfiction or something. And I guess
Right.
specifically the Bible. It's just like, well, what is this? Like you're using this demon, like, and he's casting these demons out. Well, what are they? Like,
Yeah.
what are they that he's casting out, and what is it, and how did this person get it, and what does it look like?
Yeah.
Like, and I think I was discussing with you that at the bottom here, we have these footnotes and these commentaries. And what's interesting to me is we've just started, 8 chapters into the New Testament. And in these 8 chapters, there's more commentaries and footnotes than there were in like books of the Old Testament. Just like how much is written about this. And it's a concern I have, because it's like, it's very easy to get words misconstrued. It's also very easy for people to share their opinion on a specific topic, to be able to get people to control people's ideas and thoughts, and to bring out whatever type of concept it is that you would like people to believe. It change people's beliefs, and it's a big concern with me. I don't know. Do you know much about like the extra biblical writings or anything like that? Are you aware?
I've heard of people talk about them, but I've never dove into them.
So you know that there's like something called the Apocrypha. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I've never.
Okay, yeah. So it's like another certain number of books. There's a book of Enoch and Jasher and so many of these extracurricular books, and it's just like, all right, like what books are true, what books aren't true.
Right.
Like now we got all these books, and it's like this is what was supposedly compiled for us to be able to learn, but we still have issues. Like when it's like this, it's like, what the heck? Like it just gets, for me, I think in order to learn properly, and I think this is one of the importances of schools and educations and colleges, is that you go into a school, everything is very organized and complete. So if you go into your class, the professor is going to talk about, what you're going to be going over at the end of the class, what's expected of you. And oftentimes when you go to that quiz or that test at the end of the class, you went over everything inside the course to be able to test your knowledge and your skill level properly, to see how well you did on that test. And something for me is when we have YouTube and we have all these learning programs, and you go in and it's just like, well, like, what's true? What's true anymore? And being able to segment what's true, and also being able to segment what's I don't even know how to put it. Like what things are teaching well, because there's certain things that misconstrue ideas. It's not easy to learn or to understand or to comprehend. And so, like, I'll watch a podcast and be like, that was terrible. I just wasted an hour and a half of my life, and I didn't learn anything. It's like, golly, like, how can I avoid not wasting time and finding out what's good, so that it will help me to understand what's going to be beneficial to me, and like getting rid of anything and everything that isn't. You know what I mean? You ever struggle with that?
Yeah. I mean, especially now with everybody is on the internet, and it's so easy to just create anything, whether it be like a blog post or a YouTube video or whatever, but it's like it's so easy to just go online and say like, "Oh, this is the truth." And then people will take your word for it with no, it's like there's no fact checking, there's no anything, and then people just take your word at face value just because they saw a video of it. And it's like that is so dangerous, because you can say so many things and influence. That term influencer is just like, with how many people are viewing your videos and the things that you're saying, whether you think they have an impact on people or not, people are listening to you. So subconsciously, at the very least, something is going on there. And just to be spewing nonsense to them is so, I don't know. It feels like, I don't know. It's very frustrating when people just go online and knowingly lie.
Yeah, well, it's not just frustrating, but it's scary, because now we're in a time where technology is advancing so rapidly and so quickly, where the ability to just share information can be compounded so quickly. And like, again, Jake, we're going back thousands and thousands of years ago where we're already struggling being able to decipher what was truth when they just had pen, paper, maybe even rocks and stones, and like trying to understand which of those were credible resources to now the point where we have people with phones and iPads and all these other things, and they're just writing here and they're writing there, and AI is writing stuff, and who's writing this and who's writing that. Like in the future, it's going to be like, how are people going to be able to tell what was true and what wasn't true of what happened with all the stories and all the
Right.
information that it's possible to be able to share? It's like, man, it's really scary. So that's why for me, this is so special. This part of connecting with the creator, like really trying to be able to figure out and hopefully just hear his voice. I don't know how that's going to be, what it looks like, if it's an audible or if it's just a guidance where, you know, I lose a job here or something happens here and I have to go here, or, you know, maybe it's just that. Maybe it's just accidents sometimes just happening, and like it's like you have no other choice but to go here. It's like, okay,
Right.
you got it, God. Like, okay, I'm I'm just gonna follow and like just keep trying to survive. Like that's what I'll keep doing. But you know, I don't know how we get to that point, but it's sad because we're getting to a point where it's really difficult to determine what is true and what isn't true, other than personally by people's actions. And so when you have all these documented sources and stuff, then that gets difficult because you can't really meet everybody or see the behind the scenes of everybody sharing all this information, you know?
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
So it's scary, man.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to share about that one?
I think my main thing there was it's kind of hard to follow along. I mean, the reading is very easy, so it's not hard to conceptualize, but it's like it gives you one, two, three, four, five, six just straight miracles back to back to back. And it's just like it's very hard to conceptualize like as you were saying, like in the Old Testament, Genesis, you start with Adam and Eve, and then you work through Exodus with Moses and Isaac and Jacob that we were just going over in Genesis, and then before you go to Exodus, and then you go to the New Testament. It seems like it's just jumping around all over the place, so it's kind of hard. It's difficult to follow sometimes.
Well, no, and it's like in Genesis, it was almost like a very slow story where you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there and you're just here, and you're like,
Yeah.
and you're about ready to fall asleep. I said, oh, okay. Like just slowly driving down the road,
Mm-hmm.
and then here in like New Testament,
Yeah.
it's like ding, 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 ding. It's
Yeah.
like, holy cow, dude! Like, just excitement. Here,
Yeah.
watch this, watch it, watch it. No, watch this, watch this, watch this. Like one upper, you know. It's just,
Yeah.
I get it, dude. It's yeah. So I'm trying to stay grounded and just kind of comprehend everything and then regurgitating it. But there, again, with this, there's a lot more for us to talk about than there was in Genesis. I mean, we read over quite a few chapters in Genesis where there wasn't as much to talk about, where now it's just like, what's this? What's this? I think it's more of us asking questions and trying to
Right.
comprehend like what it is going on here. But
It's also
I agree.
the New Testament is a lot more. It's a lot more. I feel like people quote the New Testament a lot more. Maybe that's because it's like Jesus speaking or maybe prophecy or something like that, and he's declaring and things like that. But it's like we read through all of that Jacob and Isaac and Esau and that whole story, and there's not one super popular like Bible verse that we read through, I don't think, that like the majority of people would recognize as a Bible quote. Like, you know, there's very I don't know, it's I don't want to say
John,
generic Bible verses, but it's
oh,
like the super popular ones that like everybody gets like tattoos of and stuff. And it's like it seems like all of those are the New Testament. It's just like it's just like more quotable almost, it seems, you know?
Well, again, it has to do with where we grew up, right? So we grew up in the Midwest, very, very, very Bible Belt Christian, where if you grew up in a place like New York, you're going to have more Catholicism there in your like Christian circle. So it's going to be a lot about Mary and different aspects of that. And then there's just certain areas of town that's all Jewish. And so any type in those Jewish areas, like down here in South Florida, you have areas in Aventura, Miami Beach, Hollywood, Boca Raton. Those four cities right there. A lot of Jewish people. So if you grew up in those areas, you're not hearing anything about the New Testament. So it's
I
always,
see.
Torah, Isaac, and Jacob, and all of those, Old Testament stories. And I'm sure, all throughout the world, just wherever you grow up and the religion that you're around is what those stories are that you continue to hear that are popular.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like I think if you grew up in like what Iraq or what are some Muslim, I guess, cities, it's
Right.
probably have the same type of thing.
Right, right. Yeah. I guess I never thought of that.
So, chapter 9. So he stepped out into a boat, crossed the lake again, and came to his own town. Some people brought him a paralyzed man laying on a mattress. When Yeshua saw their trust, he said to the paralyzed man, "Courage, son, your sins are forgiven." On seeing this, some of the Torah teachers said among themselves, "This man is blaspheming." Yeshua, knowing what they were thinking, said, "Why are you entertaining evil thoughts in your hearts? Tell me, which is easier to say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or 'Get up and walk'? But look, I will prove to you that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." He then said to the paralyzed man, "Get up, pick up your mattress, and go home." And the man got up and went home. When the crowd saw this, they were awestruck and said a bracha to God, the giver of such authority to human beings. As Yeshua passed on from here, he spotted a tax collector named Matityahu sitting in his collection booth. He said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. While Yeshua was in the house eating, many tax collectors and sinners came and joined him and his Talmudim at the meal. When the Perushim saw this, they said to his Talmudim, "Why does your rabbi eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But Yeshua heard the question and answered, "The ones who need a doctor aren't the healthy, but the sick. As for you, go and learn what this means. I want compassion rather than animal sacrifices, for I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners." Next, Yochanan's Talmudim came to him and asked, "What is it that we and the Perushim fast frequently? Why is it? But your Talmudim don't fast at all." Yeshua said to them, "Can wedding guests mourn while the bridegroom is still with them? But the time will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them. Then they will fast. No one patches an old coat with a piece of unshrunk cloth, because the patch tears away from the coat and leaves a worse hole. Nor do people put new wine in old wineskins. If they do, the skins burst, the wine spills, and the wineskins are ruined. Now they pour new wine into freshly prepared wineskins, and in this way both are preserved." While he was talking, an official came in, kneeled down in front of him, and said, "My daughter has just died, but if you come and lay your hand on her, she will live." Yeshua with his Talmudim got up and followed him. A woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years approached him from behind and touched the tzitzit on his robe, for she said to herself, "If I can only touch his robe, I will be healed." Yeshua turned, saw her, and said, "Courage, daughter, your trust has healed you," and she was instantly healed. When Yeshua arrived at the official's house and saw the flute players and the crowd in an uproar, he said, "Everybody out! The girl isn't dead, she's only sleeping." And they jeered at him. But after the people had been put outside, he entered and took hold of the girl's hand, and she got up. News of this spread throughout all that region. As Yeshua went on from there, two blind men began following him, shouting, "Son of David, take pity on us." When he entered the house, the blind men came up, and Yeshua said to them, "Do you believe that I have the power to do this?" They replied, "Yes, sir." Then he touched their eyes and said, "Let it happen to you according to your trust." And their sight was restored. Yeshua warned them severely, "See that no one knows about it." But instead, they went away and talked about him throughout that district. As they were going, a man controlled by a demon and unable to speak was brought to Yeshua. After the demon was expelled, the man who had been mute spoke, and the crowds were amazed. Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel, they said. But the Parashim said, it is through the ruler of the demons that he expels demons. Yeshua went about all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every kind of disease and weakness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harried and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his Talmudim, the harvest is rich, but the workers are few. Pray the Lord of the harvest will send out workers to gather in his harvest. So I think one of the things that stuck out to me from the Torah, the Zitzit, so is it Exodus, Leviticus? I don't remember the exact verse, but it talks about taking a thread and putting it on the four corners of your garment. So if you ever see Jewish people out walking with their like black hats and their black outfits, and you'll see little strings coming from their garments, that's what that Zitzit that lady touched of his, that's supposedly what that was. So
I see.
That's what that is. And I was just like, go ahead.
I think this chapter was just kind of a continuation of miracles, obviously, but I think it's so say that this book is 100% true. All of this stuff did happen, and it's crazy to think about. There could be people there seeing Jesus do all of these things, all of these miracles, healing these people of all these diseases, of all these states of mind, bringing somebody back from the dead, and there's still people there saying, like, just doubting him and saying, well, it's only because he's the leader of the demons that he can expel demons, and things like that. It's just kind of mind-boggling to me, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, even without advanced technology back then and like what they had, it's just, I agree, it is very mind-boggling to think that people would be saying that. But even like with the technology we have today, everybody's always trying to, what is it, disclude or try to prove other people wrong in what they're saying. It's always just trying to do that, no matter what it is, disprove anything and everything. The biggest struggle, a struggle that I have again is, I will prove to you that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. It's like, I don't understand how someone is given that. Obviously, I think the claim is that he was perfect, he was blameless, he was sinless. But it's like, well, don't you have to prove that you're going to be sinless before you can do that? And the only way to prove you're sinless is by dying without sin. Right. So, like, how are you able to do that? And it's just like, it's almost like when I hear this, it's like, did he even have free will? Like, did Jesus even have free will? Because if he had free will, he would have had the opportunity to sin after that. So if he had the opportunity to sin after that, how was he given the power to be able to forgive sins when he wasn't blameless and perfect yet? Like, that there's no determination that that's going to run out true. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
And if it's God incarnate, then he doesn't have free will, and this is like, it was actually God coming down on earth.
Yeah, I guess I've never thought of that, but.
And then when you think about God coming down on earth, and it's like, okay, so if he came down to be a Messiah and a Savior, well, who is he saving, and what, like, at what point do you? Okay, so I understand the people who previously, died, and whatever happened. Again, we have this idea of heaven, that their sins were forgiven through, used to be sacrifices, but now they're wholly forgiven through Jesus. So now they can experience heaven. But it's like the people who are coming after, it's like they can just go and they have this reassurance that somebody previous to them, like me and you, somebody previous to us already came and forgave all of our sins. So we have that grace and we have that now. Not to say that okay, we can go do whatever, but it's like, what was the purpose of him coming all the way back then? And it's like, why are people continuing to live? Like, what's the
Right.
purpose of humanity continuing to move on? Like, what's God doing with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how many more people, souls, need to be created? Like,
Hmm.
when does it stop?
Hmm. I guess I don't know.
Because there's supposed to be supposedly a second coming now, right? And like to try to even understand what that means and why that is, it's like, what?
Right.
That's that's a struggle I have, man, with all these extracurricular books and the things that are going on now. Where it's just like, man, like this is really hard to understand from a logical perspective, and even sometimes from an emotional perspective. When you pray, you do these things, and you don't feel much connection, or you don't have a good understanding. Don't know.
Right. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add to that one?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Chapter 10. Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out impure spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, who is called Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: Do not go among the Gentiles, or enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, proclaim this message: The kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not get any gold or silver or copper to take with you in your belts. No bag for the journey, or extra shirt or sandals or staff, for the worker is worth his keep. Whatever town or village you enter, search there for some worthy person and stay at their house until you leave. As you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it is not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. Truly, I tell you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. Be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and be flogged in the synagogues. On my account, you will be brought before governors and kings as witnesses to them and to the Gentiles. But when they arrest you, do not worry about what to say or how to say it. At that time, you will be given what to say, for it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. You will be you will be hated by everyone because of me, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. The student is not above the teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for students to be like their teachers, and servants like their masters. If the head of the house has been called Be- Beelzebul, how much more the members of his household? So do not be afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim from the roofs. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not two sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows. Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will before my Father in heaven. Do not suppose that I come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his feather, a daughter against her mother, a daughter in law against her mother in law. A man's enemy will be the members of his own household. For anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not keep up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward.
I guess the the passage, chapter or verse 36 is a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Like, I'm not really sure what he's talking about specifically there, and it seems like not accepting him, right? Like,
Right. It's kind of stated in it's stated in a weird way. It's do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. It seems like that's just it's like coming to turn people against each other almost. Not it's like
well, yeah, and it's like I didn't come to bring peace, but it's like I'm the savior, and that's what isn't the savior the Messiah? Isn't that peace? Like, what
right.
is that? Like, that's bringing acceptance, that's bringing forgiveness, which is abundance of peace. And so whoever acknowledges me in the presence of others, I will also acknowledge in the presence of my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven.
Right.
I think this somewhat has to do with the story of Lot, when Lot was coming out of Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't know if you remember that story. And his wife, she turned around and looked, and she
Right.
was just turned to ashes
Huh.
for essentially a lack of faith,
Right.
obedience, maybe. But it's just it's hard to hear him say this after he just like was forgiving people's sins, and they like not having to believe in him. He was telling people to not tell other people about him,
Right.
and then it's like now we're going, don't suppose that I've come to bring peace to the land. It's not peace I have come to bring it, but a sword. It's like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
what? Like,
Yeah. It seems
where's this coming
very
from?
it seems very like oxymoronic almost. It's like when you think of Messiah, you think of forgiveness and all like just an overwhelming amount of love and every I don't know, just compassion and love and forgiveness and maybe it's just the way that it's worded that it makes it seem so aggressive, but it's like sure, these people can put uh God and the Messiah above all of their uh, human based relationships, I guess I would say. And by that note, it would be everything's okay, but I guess I don't know. It just doesn't come off as very compassionate or forgiving. It's like you said, and just a couple chapters ago, it's like the idea of the Old Testament and the forgiveness of sins there being a little bit more harsh, and now it's like generations later, we could just be alive, and since this person before us came and forgave all of our sins, yeah,
Especially when he previously just talks about asking for forgiveness, and that forgiveness is what maybe gives you eternal life, or
right,
whatever that is. And now it's like a man against father. It's because the man against father isn't accepting me as Messiah, so now he's going to be turned against his father. And it's just, it seems very, very prideful and arrogant and destructive in terms of the families and what is being, what he's creating, versus allowing people to have that self uh, self looking inside of yourselves,
mm-hmm.
introspection, trying to see that.
Yeah,
When obviously everybody's sinning, so everybody's going to have issues, but now it's kind of putting it on a point where everybody's going to have issues, but those who accept me as Messiah will have issues, and their salvation will be forgiven, and everybody who doesn't will be pitted against these people in the pits of hell, or whatever that might look like.
right.
Do you have anything else to share with that chapter?
I don't think so.
No.
Hmm.
All right. Chapter 11. After Yeshua had finished instructing the 12 Talmudim, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns nearby. Meanwhile, Yohanan, the mercer, who had been put in prison, heard what the Messiah had been doing. So he sent a message to him through his Talmudim, asking, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for someone else?" Yeshua answered, "Go and tell Yohanan what you are hearing and seeing. The blind are seeing again, the lame are walking, people with zarat are being cleansed, the deaf are hearing, the dead are being raised, the good news is being told to the poor, and how blessed is anyone not offended by me." As they were leaving, Yeshua began speaking with Yohanan to the crowd. "What did you go out to the desert to see? Reeds swaying in the breeze? No. Then what did you go out to see? Someone who was well dressed? Well dressed people live in king's palaces. But why did you go out? To see a prophet? Yes, and to tell you he's much more than a prophet? This is the one about whom the Tanakh says, 'See, I am sending out my messenger ahead of you. He will prepare your way before you.' Yes, I tell you that among those born of women, there has not risen anyone greater than Yohanan the mercer. Yet the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. From the time of Yohanan the Immerser till now, the kingdom of heaven has been suffering violence. Yes, violent ones are trying to snatch it away. For all the prophets in the Torah prophesied until Yohanan. Indeed, if you are willing to accept it, he is Eliyahu, whose coming was predicted. If you have ears, then hear. Oh, what can I compare this generation with? They're like children sitting in the marketplace, calling out to each other. We made happy music, but you wouldn't dance. We made sad music, but you wouldn't cry. For Yohanan came fasting, not drinking, so they say, he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating freely and drinking wine, and so they say, aha, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Well, the proof of wisdom is in the action that produces. Then Yeshua began to denounce the towns in which he had done most of his miracles, because the people had not turned from their sins to God. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bet Zadai! What if the miracles done in you had been done in Zor and Sidon? They would long ago have put on sackcloth and ashes as evidence that they had changed their ways. But I tell you, it will be more bearable for Zor and Sidon than for you on the day of judgment. And you, Kafar Nachum, will you be exalted to heaven? No, you will be brought down to Sheol. For if the miracles done in you had been done in Sodom, it would still be in existence today. But I tell you that on the day of judgment, it will be more bearable for the land of Sodom than for you. It was at this time that Yeshua said, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you concealed these things from the sophisticated and educated and revealed them to ordinary folks. Yes, Father, I thank you that it pleased you to do this. My Father has handed over everything to me. Indeed, no one fully knows the Son except the Father, and no one fully knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son wishes to reveal him. Come to me, all you who are struggling and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I mean, I think the concept of not being able to understand the Father except through the Son, I think, that's something me and you shared about, like, Dad, is that, like, our view of who he was as a father isn't something that anyone else is ever going to be able to really understand because they didn't be able to have that connection with him or have that figure. Just like anybody else's father, like we're not going to be able to grasp that. So I can understand that concept.
Right. Is there anything else you had for that chapter?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't really grasp onto a whole lot of anything from that chapter.
I think it is, where they talk about he's right, the John was fasting and like not eating anything, and they said that he was demon possessed,
Right.
and then Jesus came there and does the exact opposite, and now he's what did he say?
Glutton.
He's demon possessed too. It's like a glutton, yeah, and a drunkard. It's like, oh, okay, so like that's bad and this is bad. Like it's like, well, what's the perfect scenario look like to
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Who is this perfect person then?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody has this idea of what this perfect person should be rather than I guess just seeing it for face value and what it is, and everybody's got their own predispositions, and I don't know.
Right, and we do that in all aspects of life. Each one of us individually do that with our expectations, whether it's in a partner, whether it's in work, whether it's in a vacation. It's like, oh, okay, like you have that idea. It's like, I'm gonna go to Disney. I'm gonna ride all these rides. It's gonna be amazing. And then you get there, and it's a rainy day, and there's long lines, and you're just like, what the heck? Like this is terrible. This is
Yeah.
absolutely awful. And then maybe the next week you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go to a fair, and you go to the fair and you get there and you don't have to wait in lines, but all the rides are just absolutely terrible. It's
Yeah.
like, well, this sucks.
Yeah.
This is like, okay, well, do you want to be patient and wait for the good rides, or do you just want to go ride rides? Like you just had both options, and they were both like your expectations. I think it's important to really have proper expectations and not to like. I don't know. It's like it's sometimes it can be difficult to create healthy expectations because in today's day and age, when you can have just about anything and everything, everybody expects the world.
Right.
And,
And you see all of these people that do all of these different things and have all of these different things, and it just gives you so many ideas of what is even possible.
yeah, jets. Our
Yeah.
brother flying a helicopter this weekend, like Lamborghinis. Like there's so many things that you can choose to do on a daily basis, and it's
Yeah.
like that's why I hate people who's like, well, what do you want to do? It's like that's a bad question. It's like
Yeah.
there's way too many options of what I want to do. The
Yeah.
better question is like what makes you feel like you have purpose? What brings you passion? What
Right.
enables you to be able to support yourself and brings you happiness and joy? What gives you peace of mind and time? It doesn't make you feel stressed out. It's not like just what do you want to do?
Right.
Those options are limitless. Like,
Right.
you gotta really ask better questions.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty, chapter 12. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on the Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "If any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Aware of this, Jesus withdrew from that place. A large crowd followed him, and he healed all who were ill. He warned them not to tell others about him. This was this was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. "Here is my servant who I have chosen, the one I love, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out. No one will hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed will not break, and a smoldering wick will not snuff out, till he has brought justice through to victory. In his name the nations will put their hope." Then they brought him a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute, and Jesus healed him, so he could both talk and see. All people were astonished. Could this be the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard this, they said, "It is only by Beelzebul, the prince of demons, that this fellow drives out demons." Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your people drive them out? So then, they they will be your judges. But if it's by the Spirit of God that I drive out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. Or again, how can anyone enter a strong man's house and carry off his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man? Then he can plunder his house. Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. And so I tell you, every kind of sin and slander can be forgiven, but blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven. Anyone who speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven. But anyone who speaks against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either in this age or in the age to come. Make a tree good, and its fruit will be good, or make a tree bad, and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything for good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. But I tell you that everyone will have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. Then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to him, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. He answered, A wicked and adulterous Okay. He answered, A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will stand up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and now something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to listen to Solomon's wisdom, and now something greater than Solomon is here. When an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean and put in order. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there. And the final condition of that person is worse than the first. That is how it will be with this wicked generation. While Jesus was still walking into the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside, wanting to speak to him. Someone told him, Your mother and brothers are standing outside, wanting to speak to you. He replied to him, Who is my mother and who are my brothers? Pointing to his disciples, he said, Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother.
I mean, I think that that's true throughout. That people who share the same interest, no matter what it is, they unite, right? And that becomes their family, that becomes their community. Whether it's in good or in evil, obviously, here we're talking about family, his brothers and his sisters, and what his goal was here on Earth. But people who share the same values that maybe not aren't blood or anything like that, you can tell like there's a deep connection with those types of with people. I think another thing that really just kind of stand out to me here is verse 40, where we want to see a miraculous sign from you. He replied, A wicked and adulterous generations ask for a sign. No, none will be given it but the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a sea monster, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the depths of the earth. So this is talking about the resurrection. And so we have Good Friday.
Right.
And it's usually at the evening. So you have Friday night, Saturday night, and Easter. Well, Easter is in the morning. And it's like, it was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a sea monster. So how does that work with you guys mathematically? It's like something that's been frustrating in terms of what's been created with the belief that he died on Good Friday and then he rose again on Easter, and so there's a good chance that he was he was put away before he was crucified previous to the Passover holiday, so he was able to fulfill that as the Passover sacrifice. All of the Passover things need to be cooked and done before sundown before it starts, and so he could have been the ultimate sacrifice of that, which is quite an interesting prophecy. If you still have the Old Testament, and back in Israel when the Passover lambs were slaughtered over the doorposts to protect all the Israelite children, and then everybody else was murdered. Like that kind of can bring about the sword that he was talking about with mother and father, and the sword, like what he came and what he did. If as a Messiah.
Huh.
But there's just certain things like that just don't add up. Like,
Right.
you can't have Good Friday and Easter and this verse just sitting here just staring you in the face. Like,
Right.
what do you do with this? Like, it doesn't work, guys. Like, come on.
Yeah, I guess I never noticed that.
So, I mean, those who are not with me are against me. I think that's, super clear in who we choose to be friends and, how people treat us and, what we allow. Like, if you're not for me and you're not around me and supporting me and you don't value what I have to say or agree with it, like, you're not for me, you're against me.
Right.
Like,
Right.
pretty clear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. There's a lot of things that are very clear and very exact in what they say, and then there are things that are very, very not clear at all, and
Right.
it leaves so much confusion.
It's like, oh, well, he spoke in parables. It's like, yeah, but why did he do that? Like,
Yeah.
why why would he want to make more confusion? Why would he would make this so difficult to understand and comprehend? Like,
Right.
it's
Would it not just be better to say what is true and say it to easily understand, so even the people who don't like put two and two together as easily still be able to understand it?
right. So they have a belief, so they have a faith. Because
Right.
other than that, it's almost like, oh, well, I spoke in parables so that people would just have faith for what I did, and it's just like,
Right.
it doesn't make sense, man. Like,
Yeah.
if you're teaching children, and he spoke about earlier, like, those who give children the water to drink, like, it being that to children, they need to be spoken in very simple terms. That's how they need to be treated and cradled. If that's the goal, to be able to treat them, like, then why have you made it so difficult for us to comprehend and understand? Like, why not just tell us the truth? Like, lay it out. Why does it have to be where we have to go and try to figure it out?
Right.
It's like in a relationship. It's like
Yeah.
your partner wants you to figure it out. Like, once
Yeah. It's like, why not just tell me
just
what
tell
you
me what you
want?
want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not play these games. It's like, oh, Jesus over here playing games. Like, oh
Right.
yeah, like, figure it out, boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's all I have for that one, man.
Yep. I didn't have anything else
All
either.
right. Well, that was Matthew 6 through Matthew 12. We kind of went through it pretty quick, or pretty quick, much more than what there is. I'm sure there's way
Right.
more
Oh
depth that
yeah.
we missed out on. Maybe the next time we read it, there will be even more. But
Right.
those are our thoughts on Matthew 6 through 12.
Alrighty. See you later, everybody.
See you guys.